Medicine Hat College is committed to growing a vibrant future for our learners and our region. Part of that commitment is providing opportunities for education and partnership, not just in the classroom, but in the communities we serve to increase our understanding of the world around us. Sustainability is an important part of our collective future. Tune in as we explore the health of our communities, environment, and economy through a sustainability lens.
My name is Alison Van Dyke, and my role is Food Security Coordinator. I've worked in faith organizations and not-for-profits and advocacy work, and found that I was very passionate doing that kind of work and had a personal interest in food security. When this position opened up, I applied, and I've been very happily in it ever since. The stars aligned for this position for me. I grew up on a farm outside of Medicine Hat with parents who we grew most of our own food and preserved it. So I grew up gardening and canning, and my mom was kind of like we'd call a hippie now. So she even ground her own grain for bread and made our own yogurt. We had a milk cow, that kind of thing. So I had a lot of those skills. And then as I got older, I found it interesting how accessibility to resources in a rural area made a difference in food security, household food security. If you were low income on a farm, you still generally did not go hungry. Whereas if you lived in the city and you weren't able to raise your own meat or milk animals or chickens, or you might not have access to space for gardening, you could have a food insecure household with low income. When my kids were little, I got really interested in that and how accessibility to resources made a big difference, and knowledge. There's been a lot of knowledge lost over the years through generations. I think a lot of people talk about their grandmothers canning and cooking, but that those skills were not passed down to them. So the ability to create food security within a household is lost sometimes through some of that knowledge loss. Food security is the inadequate or insecure access to the financial means to purchase or access food affordably. So that can include transportation. Say you have $10 and you have a family of 6 and you need to go buy a jug of milk. That $10 will buy the milk, but you don't have a car, so you have to take the bus or a taxi to get it. You don't have enough money for both, so you have to choose to find food in a different way because you can't physically or financially then access that food. We have to look at things in a systems manner instead, because the systems all work together. It's never just one thing. And so it's income and it's transportation and it's living wages and it's like many factors. Food insecurity or household food insecurity impacts people through mental health, through education. So think about kids going to school that maybe haven't had breakfast and don't have a lunch. It impacts people's ability to have employment and do their jobs well. So when we talk about severe food insecurity, that typically when someone reaches that point, they are skipping meals. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. If they're a parent, they're not eating so that their children can eat. So it's a pretty massive impact on people's ability to function as family units, as employees, and as students. The main causes of food insecurity are lack of income. There is also a little bit of a portion there of people maybe not knowing how to prepare food or how to do proper grocery shopping. That would be probably more on the nutrition side though, but actual lack of access to food is due to lack of income. There is a difference between household and community food insecurity. So household food insecurity is generally based on a lack of income, and then you have people who can be mild to severely food insecure in their household, so they can't access food and that impacts their day-to-day lives. Community food insecurity is more the idea that there could be foods not available to the community, or food deserts and food swamps. So areas in a city that don't have access to grocery stores. Or a food swamp is someplace that looks like there's a lot of food, but there's no healthy food options. So it could be an area of the city that has a lot of fast food restaurants, but no grocery stores. We saw a really good example of community food insecurity during COVID, at the start of COVID, when there was shortages of food items, and it didn't matter how much money you had, you could not buy them. So you could go to 5 different grocery stores, but there was no yeast or there was no flour. So that's community food insecurity, that we had an actual shortage of food items within the community. And that was a result of the supply chain. So a really long and fragile supply chain can lead to community food insecurity. There are communities in Alberta, I know some in the north, that don't have grocery stores or any access to local food, and so those communities are very food insecure as well. They don't have the population to attract businesses to come in there, but they have people with accessibility issues that still need food. So seniors in their homes that cannot drive 100 kilometers to a grocery store for a variety of reasons. At least in one of them, they were looking at taking buses of people out for shopping. We're very fortunate here to have a lot of regional and local production. So we have greenhouses that produce a lot of food. We've got Hutterite colonies and market gardeners that produce a lot of food. It's really important to support local production because it keeps that supply chain short and ensures that we do have food constantly available in our community. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about food insecurity. I think one of the common ones is the idea that people who live in poverty don't know how to budget properly or cook well enough, and that's an underlying problem when it's really an income-based issue. Also, there's a bit of a misconception that it's easy to work yourself out of food insecurity by just doing like this checklist of things like, oh, well, if you just do this and this and this, you will no longer be food insecure. But that's not the case. There can be a lot of well-meaning people saying, oh, well, if you just grow a garden, then you'll be fine. But the reality is that if you want to support a family by gardening, you need about 2 acres of land that you would garden intensively with a lot of skill and knowledge. So there are things you can do to increase your food security within your home by doing things like gardening and food preservation, but you're not going to solve the problem of food insecurity. It's a little bit difficult right now to know what local trends are because of the pandemic. So we can look at pre-COVID numbers of 2019, and I know that when we talk about emergency food provision, the food bank served a tremendous amount of households in this community. I know those numbers only went up during the pandemic, and I think it's going to be a little while before we can tell if it will return to pre-pandemic levels or if we're going to continue to see higher levels of need in the community because of job loss or circumstances changing for people. A lot of people's personal lives changed during COVID as well, and that has impacts on household food insecurity. I think that it's going to take a few years to know exactly what's going to happen, but I think we have to look a lot at wages in the community, social supports, and how that impacts household food insecurity. If we look at pre-pandemic food bank usage numbers, and we know that only 20% of severely food insecure households access food banks, we can extrapolate from that over 7,000 households in Medicine Hat are severely food insecure, which is about 12% of our population, which aligns with the provincial low-income numbers as well. I imagine those numbers will increase from during COVID and the pandemic, but it's hard to know if they'll change and return to near normal levels post-pandemic. So a great example of things we're doing well locally is the small greenhouse kiosks that many people are familiar with here in the city that have affordable, locally grown vegetables where you can just go into the kiosk and you put your money in the container and you can have beautiful, fresh, local vegetables at really affordable prices. It was unique to Medicine Hat for a long time. I know there's been some expansion into other communities, but that idea of buying directly from a producer in a way like that has made access to healthy foods very affordable and convenient. Something that we are looking at and hoping to bring eventually to Medicine Hat is a mobile low-cost grocery. So in those areas of the city where it's not walkable to get to a grocery store, we would have a van or a truck or something that would go around on a schedule and have fresh food available for purchase. So people don't have to worry about transportation, which is a huge deal in accessibility. They could just walk to maybe outside their neighborhood school or church or someplace like that, community center, and purchase some fresh and healthy food. So a sustainable food system, a good example of this is, for example, a workers' collective that is farming in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner, where the workers are paid a fair and living wage, and that the benefits to the community are that there's accessible and healthy food that is also grown in a way that's good for the environment and at fair market value, so there's economic benefit to the community as well. The impacts of food insecurity in a household are pretty significant on mental health and ability to learn, gainful employment, and participation in society. So if you're improving food security access within a home, you're going to increase all of those things. You'll have more mental wellness within the household. People will be able to do their jobs better. Students are able to learn more effectively. And then people that are not so hard pressed to be trying to find their next meal or money for the next meal are better able to participate in society and in community in a way that they're not otherwise. If I could dream big and imagine the best case scenario for a community, it would look like homes where people always had food accessible to them, that they were walkable distances to purchasing healthy, affordable, local foods, locally grown and produced foods, that kids attended school and had a healthy, nutritious meal provided for them at lunch in universal school food programming, and that kids would learn how to grow their own food and prepare their own food in schools, and that they would work intergenerationally with seniors at senior centers and in community centers doing food-based projects together like gardening or cooking classes, that we would reduce our need for those emergency food services because people would have the means and the access to be able to make those food choices for themselves.
Learn, partner, and grow with us. Visit mhc.ab.ca/ourfuture to learn more.